I talk about this kind of creative partnership thing, how we're the creative partnership guys. And then three, it's like just hearing the journey that every single one of these docs goes through. It's so useful to see how you get there. Well, that's my like big intro meta rant.
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor! 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 Doctor!
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schlow.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Physicians and Properties. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Schlow. This episode was so much fun to record. Really, if there's any episode that we're able to bring in a Star Wars reference and tie that into real estate, you know it's a good one. This is a fun episode with Dr. Jordan Kapper, otherwise known as Kapper. He's an emergency medicine physician and co-founder of Lantern Light Capital, a self-storage investment company. If you are interested in self-storage or investing in self-storage, this is the episode for you. It is so much fun to hear Dr. Kapper's enthusiasm when he's talking about these self-storage deals. And it's really evident how much he loves real estate and how much he cares about his investors. This was just not a good episode if you have shiny object syndrome like me, but a truly all-around incredible episode. So if you're interested in self-storage or just interested in learning more about another incredible physician's journey investing in real estate, then this episode is for you. As always, if you learned something from this episode, if you gained some valuable insight, please just share it with someone who you think would gain some value from it. Really appreciate it. That's how the podcast grows. Please also give us a 5-star review and subscribe to the podcast. That's how Apple Podcasts realizes that we exist and pushes us out to more folks who are going to benefit from it. So I really appreciate you doing that for us. And without further ado, let's get started on this incredible episode in regards to self-storage with Dr. Jordan. Good morning, Dr. Jordan Kapper. How you doing?
I'm doing excellent, my friend. And yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I'm glad to chat with you. I'm trying to, fuel up with a couple energy drinks here. We were talking about that before the show. So trying to bring it to the podcast. And again, thanks for having me.
No doubt about it. I'm sure you'll bring it. I'm fueling up too. If you see me sipping on some coffee, we did a 14er yesterday, my wife and I, with a good old 3 a.m. wake up call. So feeling it a little bit this morning. Luckily, I'm not standing up for the podcast, so my legs might give out. So
Oh
we'll
yeah,
see how it goes.
there you go. Nice, man. Yeah, we were chatting before the show, about your residential assisted living model. And man, I love, well, first of all, I love your branding. Every time you go on one of these shows, I kind of like to scope out the person. I love your branding. I love your style. I think you're doing it right. And it's just, I don't know. I just talking to you in 2 minutes, you really get that feel for, it's like, okay, we're kind of doing this same type of thing. And
Absolutely.
it's part of that journey that we all share too, this like journey into medicine. And some of it you don't want to talk about on the podcast, right? It's like, I always think about the line from Star Wars. It's like, I've never seen such a hive of scum and villain. And I think to some degree, we've all been exposed to that. It's morning here for me, and it's a nice way to wake up and come on a show like this and interact with good folks like yourself. Just it brings joy to my heart, and so does building metal sheds. So I think we'll talk about that.
Oh, we definitely will. Yeah. Well, thanks for the kind words. Really appreciate it. I think what you guys are doing as well, it's all about teaching physicians how to invest in real estate in different asset classes and learn how that can help them have the freedom to practice medicine and live life how they want to. And I completely agree. Yeah, it's been fun. Physicians and Property has been a fun journey that was completely unexpected. I told my wife one day, I was just like, hey, I'm just going to start a Facebook group and see what happens. And if we get 100 people in there, that'd be awesome. And then it's been really cool to now lead to a podcast and some other cool things that are coming down the pipeline. So thanks for your kind words. And more importantly, thanks for coming on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, man. I do kind of the same thing, the podcasting, finding investors. And I think I always enjoy the conversation, I talk about this, the meta conversation of our
Yeah,
branding, of what message we're putting out there. And because it really is important, doing what's right for your investors, assuming that is one of your major plays. Like right now, I've interacted with a bunch of different investors in a bunch of different ways. Like I have a syndication deal, a deal where we brought on a single GP as an investor as well, like a doc that's going to invest us up, help us manage this whole self-storage facility. That's one of our models. I have another deal where I actually slowly convinced my cousin, a family member, and it's don't partner thing. I remember one of the first little speeches I got from somebody that was mentoring me a little bit on in real estate was like, "Oh, Nutty, it'll always go bad." And I'm like, "Oh my God, shoot, that's what I'm thinking about doing anyways." Like, I don't know. I love it. I love doing these storage deals. We were talking before the show. I would call ourselves, we're the creative partnership guys. And one of my main, you go on all these podcasts, right? And what's your goal? And again, to this meta conversation, my branding, the hat, the Lantern Light Capital hat. Like, what is my main goal coming on the show? It's like, well, one, you know me and you have the parasocial relationship with me once because you've heard me rant so many times. Two, it's to say, hey, that's right. I love the parasocial thing. You're like kind of friends with all these like influencers. It's to get to know me through this parasocial way and then bring it into real life. Two, I talk about this kind of creative partnership thing, how we're the creative partnership guys. And then three, it's like just hearing the journey that every single one of these docs goes through. It's so useful to see how you get there. Well, that's my like big intro meta rant. I'm feeling like very cerebral today. Cleaning out one of my favorite deals, we cleaned out 42 tons of trash from this like dilapidated self-storage facility. And
Oh,
it's
wow.
chugging. We ended up zero. It was a purchase and there were zero renters when we first got it. We're chugging up from there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. 42 tons. Yeah, I do want to hit on that for sure. Yeah, agreed. It's a blast. My favorite part of all of this is what we're doing right now, just having this conversation. The dream would be, could we do it face to face and plus or minus record the podcast? Certainly that's
Yeah.
way better, but this is fantastic as well. Well, let's step back if you don't mind. Can you just give folks kind of a broad overview, who you are, what you do, and kind of, Lantern Light Capital and what you do in that
Yeah.
regard, and then we'll
Yeah.
see where that takes us.
I guess the intro seems like a reasonable idea. Yeah. My name's Jordan Kapper. I'm an emergency medicine doctor. I'm the owner of Lantern Light Capital. We are a self-storage investment company. So we buy, operate, and build self-storage facilities. And my journey, I don't know, maybe it's my own like little personal not thinking I'm good enough or whatever. My journey is the classic. I like to call it the classic kind of route to get into real estate. And it's the house hack, right? So my first house that I ever bought was a duplex, and that was during residency. So I bought the duplex, ended up renting it out, right? And so this is kind of either falling into it or semi-purposeful on the back of my mind. I'm like, okay, all right, I can buy the duplex kind of thing. And then from there, you start chugging forward, right? You start looking at more properties, got into a couple more multifamily properties and then bigger multifamily. And then from there, that kind of using the Burr model, right? The buy, rehab, refinance, repeat thing where you're buying the property and then fixing it up. You're trying to get it for cheap. And then you can try to refi and like pull all your money out of it there, which, by the way, that model works at scale as well. And I guess you can sell the property at the end too. But so going from single family to multifamily and then kind of playing around with the commercial space. So have a good friend, Sean, one of my partners. We actually own, this is a whole nother rant, but we actually own a company called Maven Success. We help US based companies find remote employees like virtual assistants. So we're a virtual assistant staffing company, but we also own storage together, which is actually kind of a natural spinoff. And I suspect you'll start hearing more and more if you listen to these podcasts about the whole virtual assistant space. It's a big topic of conversation and scaling your company quickly with staff that's a reasonable price. Anyways, point is, Sean and I, going from the multifamily, we kind of looked at things and said, hey, how do we scale? Right. And I have a good friend, Bill. He scales single family. He just churns single family homes. He does it really, really well. That wasn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted to bite on chunkier stuff, right? And so obviously you kind of say, okay, what kind of commercial type properties could we do? And we started from the beginning, basically like analyzing different models. And you don't really understand a model until you've, I guess, dug into the model. And so one of the first things that Sean and I dug into was residential assisted living. And we ended up partnering with some folks. And after getting deep into the model ourselves, we decided, and this is what we were talking about before the show. I'm like, Tell me about your model because it seems like you're doing it right. And you solved basically the key problem that we were dealing with, which was that finding the right operators is the absolute key to residential assisted living. And residential
Absolutely.
assisted living, I mean, I talk about it, but my take is, you buy a home anywhere, say, and these are all ultra rough numbers, right? You buy a larger home, say 400,000 to 800,000 or more, whatever. It's got 6 to 8 bedrooms or whatever. And then you are building the home's already there, but then you run a residential assisted living facility where you have folks living in the home. And we dug into this model and it was like, oh, we didn't have the network to find the operators like what you do. And you're doing the podcast, right? This is part of what you're doing, getting that word out there. And I think me and you were talking about the verbiage of it. You're like, yeah, that's the biggest problem is finding the operators. And I'm like, I don't, that technically, yes, that statement's true, but it's not the problem, right? That's your business. I mean, that's right. Finding great operators is what you do. And you have the rest of the investment structure in mind. So anyways, we flipped from that. We looked at the syndicating apartments kind of thing. And you know what? We just fell in love with self-storage. And so, yeah, I bought my self-storage facility and basically every single deal, similarly to maybe I got to call it something better, to my boring journey in single family to multifamily to commercial real estate. Similarly to that, every single self-storage deal that I've done since has been a growth in some way from being, just a G on a deal, putting money into it and not really operating it myself. That was that first deal with Sean to operating a first deal to raising money from other folks to doing the one where I mentioned that we had to haul out 42 tons of trash, a big, huge rehab that bordered on a construction to doing a new construction deal to bringing on investors, right? And so like every step we've gone further and further. And now our main model to kind of arrive at the very end is we have two types of deals that we target at Lantern Light Capital. I guess maybe we'll say three. And I'm actually just noticing, I think this is sunblock. I ran with this hat. I shouldn't run with my one that I bring on the pod.
Hey,
That
it
later.
looks good, man. I like it.
That's the Lantern Light look. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, there you go. So we have, well, I'll say three models. One is your standard syndication, which this again, being on part of this podcast or being on this podcast is part of that, right? Like getting the word out there, building a group of investors that are interested in passive investing. That's huge, right? Being able to have that network of folks that follow you, that know what you do, that know when you underwrite a deal, they have faith in what you're doing, that you have the skill, the ability, and trust in those deals. So the standard syndication, I don't know if I want to call that boring either, but there's a right-ish way to do that, I think. There's a lot of syndicators out there. Most are doing a pretty good job. I actually know some of the ones that don't do a good job. And it was probably one of the best deals I ever invested in was one of the deals that I met some kind of crummy syndicators. I learned about 10 times more than one of my first syndication deals where it was with a really good syndicator. But that's another story. Anyways, we do the syndication, we do the creative partnerships. So, say you, Alex, have a residential assisted living facility, and oh, by the way, it's on 16 acres, right? Or we were talking about one of my favorite land flippers who was on your podcast, Momta. I've been bugging poor Momta for the past year. I'm like, Momta, you have 100 different land deals you're chugging through. Well, you better one of those, just hold on to them and we'll see if we can build self storage on it. That's the creative partnership deal. Alternatively, there's physicians and other high net worth folks that are interested in investing in self storage and really like truly being involved. And so what we'll do is there'll be like the equity GP where they actually have to, so you can't just bring somebody on as a general partner and just have them give you money for like SEC investment type reasons. Like that's considered a raise. And one, also, you don't want to kind of like work around that and just say, oh, yeah, they actually did work. No. So, our target for those other types of creative partnerships are like, okay, you're a physician. Maybe you did one or two homes and they're single family, multifamily, whatever. And you really want to get into self storage. Well, you bring the equity or the money, right? You bring that part of the deal, and then we'll bring you on as a legitimate GP. We info dump all of our operations, all our backend operations. We give you access to everything. And then me, Ben, who is my current partner in Lantern Light Capital, Ben and we will onboard you to the team for that deal. And like, I mean, we're doing that. The deal right now that I'm doing that with is with my cousin, which has been a
That's awesome.
great
Bringing the
experience. So
family in too.
I'm bringing the family into it. I'm looking at my neighbor's house out the window. I don't think he knows I'm going to pitch him on one of these deals within the next week or so. So I'm trying to bring you in on it, man.
Let's go. Well, yeah, we talked about my shiny object syndrome beforehand, Jordan. And yeah, I think it's cool. I tell everybody that I meet about real estate, and it's really
I'm
cool.
giving you like the crack pipe right here. I'm like, here you go, bud. It's good. Sorry, I'm ER. I don't know if crack pipe is the right term for like the family
Quite, yeah.
medicine.
Oh, that's okay. It works. It works. Yeah. Well, a lot to unpack there for sure. It's really cool to see your journey and how you got to commercial and how you got to self storage. If someone's listening to this and they're just now getting started, would you say, hey, just skip the single family arena and jump right to commercial? Or do you feel like you learned a lot with the house hacking with the single family deals that was able to be translated into commercial success as well?
So I think there's two aspects to that answer. The first one is the whole just do it thing. I always think of this Shia LaBeouf meme. Just do it. Come on.
Do it.
Yeah, and Predator, right? That's Arnold Schwarzenegger from Predator. Come on, do it
Yeah.
now. So like the Bang is our sponsor today for the
Yeah.
show. Not really, but if they want to
And
sponsor the
if they
show, go
want
ahead.
to, yeah, go on out.
God bless. So I always think of that, like just do it. And it always takes something getting to get you over that hump and what you're going to learn. You don't know necessarily what you don't know. And so I would have said that's one, like, yes, just do it. If it's a single family, if it's renting out a room in your house, if it's just doing a burr, do it. If it's investing in your first syndication, just give it a shot, right? Now, of course, there's a risk. You always got to titrate risk in that. And look, all of us, and the mantra is changing a little bit. Like we can all just max out our 401k or 403b or whatever and max out all our tax advantage retirement vehicles and just stack, right? But ad infinitum, which, oh, by the way, it's not infinite. You just, you're eventually going to die. So you can just stack, add 30 years. And that's the safest route, right? At least historically, investing in the market is the safest route. But there's something that you learn so much from doing different types of creative deals. So I would say, well, geez, now there's a whole nother answer I'm thinking about. But I would say one, whatever opportunity is in front of you, really dig into it and say, like, okay, if it's your first deal, right? Is it that risky? And if the answer is like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like that crazy, then just like, okay, just do it. I think that's very important. Alternatively, my cousin Gabe, his first deal is a $1.2 million self-storage deal. And he is crushing it. So Ben is my current partner. He's a ER doctor, co-founder of Lantern Light Capital. He owns a emergency medicine physician staffing company,
Oh,
which
cool.
is oh my God. Well, one, I've told Ben this, but I don't know how many of my podcasts he's listened to. But this is my speech about Ben. He's literally, in like Marvel comics, they talk about like the skill sets of different people. So it's like, like the Hulk has the ability to like regenerate quickly and he has like speed and like strength. Like Iron Man has one of his skills like genius level IQ. And so
Right.
Ben, his main skills are like super genius tier IQ and the ability to like rapidly iterate on like multiple different problems. This is my partner in Lantern Light, by the way. And he also has like amazing negotiation ability. And that's from years of working at his staffing company, which, by the way, I'm employed by. So I'm loyal to my partner in many different ways and we have each other's backs. He's negotiated with hospitals like day in, day out as a locums company for years. And so his ability to negotiate and to like see the bigger picture is just like unparalleled. So Ben and I brought in my cousin to his first deal. Remember, this long rant is really your question about what should you do for
I,
your first bit? And
I love it.
Gabe, and I know we talked about the Hulk in this for a second. I forget what the relevance of that was. Anyways, Ben and I are like, oh my God, Gabe is unbelievable. He's negotiating with like 6 banks at once, finding financing for this thing,
Wow.
talking to the seller, dealing with the seller in ways that I don't even know if they're like appropriate for TV and the like little social interactions that are going on with, these sellers can be a little we'll say rough around the edges for now. And that's one of your plays with these smaller facilities, dealing with folks that, well, maybe they wrote their financials on a piece of scratch paper for the past year and a half. And to get it out of them, you got to bro down a little bit, we'll say, because the bank isn't going to finance the thing. And it's like Gabe, he's a firefighter and he's super smart and he's doing all that. And it's his first deal. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is amazing. So, long story short, he took the first deal that came in that really presented in front of him, and it was a deal with Lantern Light Capital with us. And I mean, he's the amount that Gabe is learning right now. I can just see he's just literally making leaps and bounds like in a month and a half. It's amazing.
That's so cool. Yeah, and it's awesome. We were talking about partnerships beforehand, and just, having great partners just rapidly accelerates the business. I
Yep.
mean, it's pouring fuel on the fire, and, I'm really lucky too. I got two incredible partners, Charlie and Luke, and then, of course, my wife, who's not as interested in the real estate space, but all of her support is incredible as well. Hopefully she's listening to this, and that makes her a little bit happy, but she's the best. But yeah, the key is finding someone that's complementary to you, but has a different skill set. And it sounds like Ben really brings that to Lantern Light Capital for you. And
Yeah,
the negotiating tactics and everything else that he's able to add, I'm sure adds so much value to the company, way more than you
huge.
could just do by yourself.
Yeah, it's such a huge thing. I mean, the partnerships, and it's really almost. I remember Sean is my good friend that I started this journey with, and he's I'm in on several different deals with him. Ben is the co-founder of Lantern Light Capital with me. Those are my two main partners, I would say. And I remember Sean always spoke about this mentality of like, trying to build something out and automate things. And I love doing that from a self-storage standpoint because self-storage is, well, there's a lot of different value adds, but self-storage at its core, which it's actually changing a little bit now, but its core is, well, you're renting out metal sheds to folks that need to store their stuff. And there's a lot of ways to automate that and make it really, really efficient. And I kind of say, like, there's almost a right way to do self-storage in that you can really hammer down every single aspect of the operations to where they're almost perfect. And if there's a little issue, you address it, you fix it. If a customer moves into the wrong unit, we just had this the past week, where you go back and you say, okay, well, what's wrong with the way that I labeled the unit numbers? And well, we figured out there was something wrong with them. They were to the side of the unit, or some of them were faded and it wasn't clear which unit was labeled. It's like, okay, you address that problem and you address tons and tons of these. And before you know it, you have a machine that is operating. And that's what we try to build out. John had pitched me at the very beginning of this journey this kind of mentality. And I look at it with the partnerships as well to say that, like, okay, every partner that I bring on is how do they, like you're saying, how do they complement me? Do we work well together? Are they trustworthy? And once you have that right team together, man, wow, this is something. Yeah, it's really something special.
Yeah, well-oiled machine. Yeah, systems are everything in this business, and I'm sure in yours as well. Self-storage, what do you love about it? Why self-storage? Why not some of these other asset classes?
Well, one, I love you saying shiny object syndrome. Talk about that a lot. So there is that, right? And to neglect that answer, I think is just that's a key part of anybody. It should be at least an undertone to everyone's answer, right?
Mhm.
Because no matter what asset class you do, I think you can do it well. Now, that
Yeah.
said, I absolutely love self-storage. I think the reason just like internally that I was drawn to it is one, the deal size is bigger. It's right? It's right for syndication and scaling. So you can scale to all different levels and you can utilize, and this is something that I kind of saw glimpses of in the beginning. Remember, I said that with Sean and I, we like purposefully picked this asset class. The first deal that I ever did was one that fell through after 8 months. We had run pro forma and intensive due diligence on a deal in Walnut Port, and we just didn't take it across the finish line. Basically, the seller ended up, well, I guess I don't want to sell right now. Okay, fine. And he sold, I think, a year or two later, whatever. But I had understood this industry, and I had seen kind of glimpses of the future of where I could be now and where I would want to be in the future. And so that was attractive to me. The ability to really automate these things and dig into those specifics. So, there's really only different 30 different systems that go into any self-storage facility. If you like really dig into it, you can think about these things in a finite type box as opposed to, say, a hospital, right? Like, think about a big hospital network. I mean, the number of systems at play in a hospital network, there are at least thousands, right? It's literally impossible to fully optimize a hospital unless you're, an advanced AI and you could compute, trillions of data points at once and like optimize all of them. It's just not a thing. There's too much going on. Self-storage, there's not too much going on. In the end, you're just really efficiently renting out metal boxes. And then every value add, so we like to add, we use a program called Safe Lease, which automates the tenant protection, aka the insurance for the tenants. It's called tenant protection. There's some like little legality there because I'm technically not an insurance broker. So we automate the insurance. You can do what I like to call or shedception, a box within a box, a shed within a shed where you rent out mailboxes. You can automate, I know, a lot of like pop culture references here. I'm starting to realize
One of
you
the
can
greatest
automate,
movies of all time,
automate.
though.
Yeah, right.
Inception.
I
Oh,
gotta think.
so good.
I gotta think of some more like Nolan references. Like I don't know if there's a Oppenheimer reference within the self storage industry. I'll work on it.
42 tons that you brought out
Yeah,
of your
yeah, yeah,
self-storage. Just let it,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, there's a lot of ways to optimize all those other little subsystems, whether it be U-Haul rentals or the tenant
Mhm.
protection or the boxes within a boxes, renting out mailboxes and actual addresses to your customers. So you take all these little value adds and you just like dig into every single little detail. I remember the first call center we ended up using. Shout out to the horrible call center that we ended up dumping. You guys know who you are. You did a bad job. So the first call center, I okay, let me go through the entire customer journey, right? And I just went through our website. I clicked through every single box. I put in my own credit card. I paid for my own, my own unit. And I refunded myself because I ended up not using a unit that was 7 states down the road. And I called our call center and I waited the first time I waited on hold for 4.5 minutes. And then I started looking up data on customer drop off and how quickly customers drop off a call when the call center is putting you on hold. And it's like 90% of the people drop off within 30 seconds. And then, it's like that initial drop off and then it just tails down. There's that like 1% of people who are just so stubborn. They'll wait for like, I'm staying here forever. But that was a significant portion of our customers. And it was just this one little thing. If I didn't call and I didn't go through that entire customer journey, every single customer matters in self storage. And those types of optimization are so important. And I guess the undertone to my answer is to say, well, I clearly enjoy that stuff, right? I clearly love these optimizations. And that I felt that and it excited me. And that was the big draw to self storage. It's also, oh, by the way, the number one performing real estate asset class in the past 20 years. Its default rate. I should have these numbers memorized if I'm going to be on a podcast about it. But the default rate on loans is lower than any other commercial asset class, far lower than single family, multifamily. So just like statistically, it's also the best performing asset class as well. So all of these things together, I'm like, let's rent out some metal boxes. Let's convince poor Dr. Alex to get another shiny object syndrome.
I
Um,
know. It's working.
and that, but you know what? That's the creative partnerships thing, man.
Yeah.
Seriously, if you
Way to
got,
go.
I love talking these little different creative deals because they end up kind of working. So
Yeah.
whenever you find that, residential assisted living facility
Yeah.
that's on, it actually doesn't need to be 17 acres, by the way. It can be
Okay.
like 4 and we'll make it work.
Sounds good. Yeah, land's hard to find in Arizona where we're investing right now, or expensive, but we'll see what we can do. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, self-storage, it's such an incredible asset class. I feel like everyone, if we could turn back time, would be hopping on the self-storage train even more so after we've seen all the success that it's had over the last few years. And it's recession resistant too. I mean, Americans
Sure.
are just buying more and more stuff and want to keep all their stuff. And so
Yeah.
I do see where a partnership with assisted living could work because these folks are moving out of their house into this assisted living home. Why not put it in Dr. Kapper's self storage facility? So it could work. It could work. Shiny
Yeah,
objects. Let's
man.
go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
Well, it gets to another part of it, which, okay, so what do you want to be, right? Do you want to be And what is your personality? Do you want to be the guy that just like focuses on one specific thing? And like this is a mantra if you listen to these podcasts, right? Like focus on one
Mhm.
thing, like execute, execute, execute. Okay, I'll take that. Well, like that's that's kind of what we're doing. I'm focusing on, I guess, one or two things: creative partnerships and self storage syndications. I mean,
Yeah,
so like I can do different deals, and that is kind of one of my skill sets. Like, you hear me talk about the team, bringing people on board, and like the podcast, right? The podcast shows that you're like interested in like education and communication.
absolutely.
So what is your focus? Maybe it can be you're focused on creative deals or communicating investment opportunities to the public, and like that's what you like, and that's a form of focus as well. At least to me, that's how I got around like, oh, this deal's slightly different from another deal that we did. Well, it's not shiny object syndrome. It's an awesome deal. I know how much time it's going to take. It's not going to distract me from my ultimate goal, which is to operate this, I think, awesome self storage investment company.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I don't think there's necessarily a bad thing about having different asset classes that you invest in. I think it's really hard to start off with that and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna invest a little in all these different asset classes," because then it's really hard to get the ball rolling. I think initially focusing on one thing is really beneficial, and then once you get to that point where you're quote unquote expert on that asset class, then maybe look into some others. The diversity is helpful, but yeah, I completely agree. Well, Lantern Light, I had two questions in regards to that. One, how did you come up with the name? And two, what's kind of your guys' buy box from a self-storage facility standpoint?
Yep. So the name, getting to branding, right? Ben and I love branding. I love education. I'm academic emergency medicine physician as well. Actually, well, I'm full-time locums now. Left the full-time academic, but I still teach residents all the time at a bunch of different locations. And so I love teaching. I love the messaging, and I love branding. And so this name, Lantern Light Capital, was purposefully built, right, as it should be. So one,
Mhm.
it gives me feelings of joy, right? Like this guiding light. We chose the alliteration, the lantern light. And that is, you'll see it in a lot of logos, right? That mouth feel of the brand name is very important. And so folks, I hope, would remember Lantern Light Capital. It gives us some nice seaside vibes, whether it be the lantern that you're carrying, like walking through the nighttime beach, or it's the actual, spotlight from some like beach light or whatever. I like the feel of it. And we
Yeah.
also got the logo done by Jean-Luc, who is a amazing and I think somewhat famous designer. He's a friend that I know from kind of way back here in Pennsylvania, Allentown, Bethlehem. And he did the logo for us. So we got a Jean-Luc Laub logo, which is super fancy. I think he did the American Cancer Society logo as well.
Oh,
So he's
wow.
like, yeah, yeah. We
He's
spent a
the real
little
deal.
money. Yeah, he's legit. So, anyways, that's where that came from. Purpose built with marketing and branding in mind, but also I love it. And then what's our buy box? This is an interesting question. And it really kind of irks me to give a not super specific answer because at first it would imply immaturity within your space, right? So, like, what's exactly your buy box? Well, we'll just look at anything. But if I may explain, so as not to be confused that we're immature with our buy box. So I mentioned our two major deal models, which is the creative partnerships and then self-storage syndication. So from a syndication standpoint, that one's a little more straightforward. So I guess I'll give you the very straightforward buy box first, which would be for a ground up development deal, a deal in general for a syndication to work. You're gonna have to hit about 2.5 million of construction cost. And then these typically you're looking for the after construction value to almost double. And the more you look into these syndications, those numbers tend to work. So right now we're building a smaller ground up development deal. We actually just broke ground. What's today? Sunday. We broke ground on Friday. Super exciting.
Congratulations.
So that deal is a $1.6 million all in. And then the after it's constructed and filled up, we think it'll be worth about two. And then we're going to do a phase two.
Wow.
So you can see kind of those rough numbers there. And with scale, those tend to work as well. So a lot of these ground up development deals are in that type of like value range where the value goes up. And you need that type of increase for the syndication to work because you have to deliver a certain return or Well, you never have to deliver anything. Any deal can fail. That's actually part of communicating all these investments is that you're not like, we guarantee these returns. Nothing's guaranteed. And I say that frequently. But the point is, you have to have these expected types of returns built in for it to work for everybody. So you need room to play with investors, right? To bring on investors, you got to give them, they got to get certain returns for it to be worthwhile for us. We have to get certain returns. And yeah, I mean, the deal just has to do that. So that said, our current buy box for a ground up development deal, and if anybody's listening, please, if you have a ground up development self storage facility anywhere from, say, even as low as 35,000 square foot, preferably more, but from 35,000 to 100,000 square foot in typically class A or even class like kind of B plus, which is just your all outdoor self storage, no climate control. A fully ground up syndication deal is our main focus right now. And that being said, all of these creative deals that we're doing with different partners are different. Every single one's different. And if folks say you are a land developer, say you're a wholesaler, you bring us the right deal. I mean, okay, is a $700,000 storage facility going to be worth our time? It'd be really hard if it's too small because there is work that goes into these deals. I mean, even your smallest deal is going to be, Ben and I aren't at the scale where we can close on like 20 of these in a month. I doubt most people are. And even the big operators wouldn't want to close on 20 small. I think I've only seen a handful of people that are wanting to close on like small to mid small facilities, multiple within a month. It's just a tough. I mentioned the sellers, right? At that scale, you're really part of your skill set is interacting with these sellers. That can be rough around the edges, any financials on the back of a napkin, and the bank at least prefers 8.5 by 11 mil paper with lines. Napkin is not an approved napkin. Anyways, that all being said, we look at it deal by deal when it comes to those creative partnerships. Deal by deal. And if it's a million, say it hits that kind of very minimum level to where I look at it and I'm like, okay, this is a $1 million facility. It's worth the time. Again, it's going to take some time to close. And if you have $1 million facility and you're getting it for 500,000 and you think there's minimal rehab, like, okay, that might be worth it for us, especially
Right.
if we have a partner that's bringing it to us, like Gabe, who's going to do like a significant portion of the lift and wants to do the lift. And so Gabe, he brought us this deal in Ohio, and it was a $1.2 million, two facility bundle. And I think it's got a lot of headroom on it. But even if it didn't, it's like, okay, Gabe's doing such a big lift. We found a great lender that's given it to us for only 15% down. And it's like, all right, that's
Nice.
awesome. So let's just
Yeah.
do it.
Man, everybody needs a Gabe, it sounds like.
He's going to love this podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What's up, Gabe? That's
He's got,
awesome. Gabe, if you're looking for
yeah.
assisted living homes, let me know. Yeah.
Yeah, he would kill it, man. Yeah, we use the wolf blood emoji for him. I think Ben, he always just says this random stuff. I don't know where he comes up with half of it. He's like, yeah, Gabe's got that wolf blood, which was not something we ever said before. So now it's, Gabe, wolf, and then drop of blood emoji.
That's awesome. Well, super cool. Well, congrats on breaking ground. That's exciting. How long do you think it's going to take to kind of build from ground up for that deal?
Not long. I mean, this gets into the syndication thing. Oh, well, so to answer your question before I rant, it should only take like 6 months. Yeah,
Wow.
hopefully only 6 months. That's to build, though. Once you're at the
Mhm.
build, I mean, you would hope that there's no major headaches. I haven't run into any. We build out a really cool team. This is in Indiana for these syndication deals, depending on how the deal is structured, or these like syndication level deals, I should say. That one we all self-funded, again, because we got such a low percentage down. We could bring in investors. We could like retroactively fill, but just it wasn't really worth our time to do that. If somebody comes along and says, "Oh, hey, I'll buy in on this deal. I'm ready to invest." Like, okay, maybe we would entertain it, but it's just such a good deal for us that we just kind of chomped at it, got the ball rolling. But once you're at the actual breaking ground level, I mean, you would hope it doesn't run into any major hiccups from there. It's really all the stuff that goes into developing a deal. So from the beginning, from getting approvals to getting the actual permits, that can take a long time. and there's built-in holding costs there. And that gets into these syndication models. Like right now, we're working with a guy named Vince Russell, who's pretty cool guy who's came to us and said, "Hey, I want to build a luxury car storage and club." So it's basically like
Cool.
you got your car storage, which is a standard model. There's a luxury side of it where there's that white glove service. You're storing Ferraris and Lamborghinis and stuff. But then we're also going to add a club onto it. Now, that is like a BYOB club. So, there's a social aspect of it. You can drink there. They have driving simulator type stuff. So it's actually really cool. In this model, I think this is kind of like a new and upcoming thing. There's a lot of these other folks out there that are just starting to do it. But like that particular deal, that's going to take at least a year to really, I suspect a year before we break ground on that, because there's a lot of approvals that have to be in place. The bank is going to underwrite that pretty, intensely, because it's this kind of novel model, and you're building out all these other like little subsystems. That's kind of like a storage plus, right? That it's a little more than just your standard adding tenant protection or adding mailboxes to a self-storage facility. That's a whole nother level. And so that'll take, I'm sure, a year. And then of course we're going to syndicate that deal as well, and then find investors and slowly pitch to them. So that question that you ask, is how long to build it, is important, because as a investor that's investing in passive syndication deals, it is important to understand kind of those metrics and how these deals typically work, and how they're structuring maybe the cash on cash return, which is a whole conversation. I have like a 5-hour training course on these syndications that I just put together. When you look at these deals, that time, that development time, is a significant part of it. And so it's like, you hear me say, oh, a $2 million deal that's worth 4 million. Oh, that's so big. But there's carrying costs, right? As you build these things out, and there's a lot of other costs in that time while you're leasing it up, right? So all of that kind of eats away at how much these things can make, and you have to underwrite all of those properly. And I think that's where a lot of the skill and then comes into play. And then as a passive investor, to try to get a feel, that's why I love talking about these, because to me, I think the investors, they look at what we do, they get a feel for these things. I remember my first syndication, I didn't understand exactly how a waterfall structure worked as far as distributing equity. I didn't really understand the difference between, I knew cash on cash from a residential standpoint, but I didn't really understand what cash on cash versus the IRR meant when it comes to syndications. And is that even important? Was that part of my investment goals? Like, digging into that, I think, is half the fun of being a passive investor as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really cool. And man, I was just thinking through kind of the club and the fancy self-storage facility with the Ferraris and everything else. It'd be awesome to have, different events there and car shows and all sorts of things. It would be, a cool option and cool opportunity for that. And, everyone that has those nice cars loves talking about them and showing them. And I know for me,
Yeah.
I love seeing them. So
Yeah.
that's a really cool opportunity.
Vince took me for a ride in his Lamborghini last week, and we did a video in front of it. I don't know why, but I think Ty Lopez occupies like a tad too much of my mind space. Remember, this is the old guy. Like, here in my garage, I read 17 books a day in front of his Lamborghini. And so I have to like curtail my like subtle desires to be like pseudo scammy and film too many videos with Vince in front of his Lamborghini. I'll just kind of
Yeah.
subtly post it in the back of the video. But no, it's cool. I get excited about self storage, but like, I mean, come on, let's be honest here. It's a little tough to market like, hey, look at these great storage sheds. It's not as exciting as the luxury car club. So we're going to work the Lamborghini into it a little bit more. I got to.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Makes it a little sexier. We're gonna have to wrap things up here soon, so I think we're gonna have to bring you on for part 2 at some point, because this has been fantastic. I know everyone with any sort of shiny object syndrome, it's going off right now, that's for sure, with self-storage, and it
Yeah.
is for me, so looking forward to talking with you more about it. If folks are interested in getting involved or investing with you at Lantern Light Capital, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me hang on, pull up the website here. Let me get you my actual phone number here. So you can check us out at Lantern Light Cap. That's lanternlightcap.com. Went with a shorter URL there. Or reach me directly. This is my Google Voice number. This goes directly to my cell, and you can call it as well. It's 48228-1242. So call or text me anytime if you're interested in these passive investment opportunities, or like I said, if you are a real estate investor and you just want to chat, or just bug me and just send me spam texts about my car's insurance. I guess you can send me that as well. And then if you're interested in, I got to plug Maven Success here. We help US companies find remote employees, virtual assistants for a super reasonable price. That's a company that Sean and I started up. I could go on and on about, I got to give a little shout out to our awesome virtual assistants team in the Philippines and in Egypt. Arist, Ali, Samar, you guys are like, yeah, this crew, they are truly part of our team, and I absolutely love our remote employees, our virtual assistants team. They're just so good. So I got to say hi to you guys. You got to give full support. So
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
feel
They
free to
deserve the
reach
shout
out.
out.
Oh yeah, feel free to reach out on the website or directly by phone.
Awesome. Thanks, Jordan. Any parting shots? Anything that we're missing?
No, man, that's it. If you're interested, seriously, just give me a call
Yeah.
or send me an email. It's jordan@.com is the email, by the way. Seriously, I'm glad to chat with anybody. That's kind of part of what we do, right? Like, that's why the podcast exists. I'm here for you to waste my time a little bit. I don't want to waste your time. It's fine.
Yeah.
Part of what I do is investor relations. So time wasting is part of the job. I wish you the best. Give me a call.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, I hope it was a good waste of time. I really enjoyed it. We're going to have to bring you back on here about that 42 tons of trash that you removed. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. It's been Dr. Jordan Kapper, Dr. Alex Schlo with another episode of the Physicians and Properties podcast. Signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only. It should not be considered financial or medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.